A Tennant childhood, 1933 to 1940. Kevan Weaber remembers.
What I'm telling you tonight is partly from my own memories of quite a young boy and partly from things that my parents told me later. We left Wyndham with two vehicles. One was a second-hand Pontiac and the other was a new Bedford truck, and we loaded it up with possibly 6 months' supplies. It had lots of petrol and tin food and tin butter and flour and sugar, and it was stacked up about 8 feet high above this truck. My brother, who was 15 years of age, drove one vehicle, and I remember arriving at the telegraph station at Tennant Creek, and my mother sent a telegram to Brisbane to say where we had arrived, because in those days, you took weeks or months to get anywhere, and when you arrived at a town there was a telegraph station, the old familiar telegram went through, arrived so-and-so, all well, love so-and-so. But from my memory of it, there was no such thing as a town.
No, just a few shanties.
There was just an odd person camped in the tent. The rising sun was discovered in a matter of weeks of us arriving here. And I remember going out, my brother said, "I think I have found gold." He didn't know what gold looked like, any more than I did, or my mother, or my sister, and of course my father was blind. It has been written up in the newspapers, of course, that my father actually found the mine, which is ridiculous because he was stone blind. We then immediately moved out to the mines, and we built there what was known as a bough shed. They didn't look much, but they were extremely cool and reasonably comfortable. I remember I was very proud when there was a little annex built to it, and I had my own little room. It was a bough shed room. My bed consisted of 4 posts coming out of the ground with little V's in them, with logs laid in them, and a bit of a canvas stretched across it. We moved from this original bough shed up to a house which was built up on the rising sun lease. There was a square type of house, flat-roofed house, built of native timber and flat corrugated iron. It consisted of basically 2 rooms with a curtain across it that separated my mum and father's bedroom, and a veranda on the southern side, a veranda on the eastern side, and the kitchen was on the northwestern corner, and the mess room where the men used to eat was on the western corner. My father then built a house in town, in Patterson Street, on a site which is now, I notice today, is known as Pico Park. It was a large house built of corrugated iron and a big veranda completely surrounding it and built up on wooden piles. We, of course, carted all our water. It was carted in 44-gallon drums or tanks, which was one of the jobs I got when I was 13 or 14 because I could drive the truck. It was considered light work, so the children did it. Well, nowadays they call them children, in those days they were young men, I suppose. When we first arrived here in 1933, we got it out by buckets. We used to back the truck back and forth to pull the bucket up. And later on, of course, they put a windmill on it. And later still, they put other bores down there in place of the original hand-dug well. And they had pumps on there, and it was pumped up into a tank, and you just drew it from the tank, which made things a lot easier.
Now, Kevan, coming here as a child and growing up to a young man, what sporting life would you have had here?
Well, we children had very little sporting life at all. You might say none. We weren't short of exercise. I helped where I could in the mine and helped with the truck. The Fords, Jackie and Jimmy and Pat, they did work like carrying and collecting wood. We had bikes. That was the thing when we got push bikes. It was fantastic. And we got a million punches, of course, we called the Bindy eyes. We used to stop every mile or two and fix a punch. But I can remember one occasion we went out about 8 or 10 mile out, and we finished up coming down like tandem because we ran out of patches, and we had to take the front wheel off one bike and hook the forks onto the rear wheel of the other one and came back like a bicycle built for 2. There were a few people who started a boys' club, and they got us down in Scottsville, and they used to teach us athletics and things like that. And we had boxing tournaments. But the only organised sport that I can recall was the women playing basketball. There weren't enough. I think they played a reduced team, but it was good fun, and everybody used to go down and watch at night, of course. It was too hot during the day. And the men used to play football, and they played on this terrible hard ground. Everybody used to come and park their cars around the football field and watch from their cars. And there was lots of bruises and lots of gravel rash, and plenty of work for the hospital the next day. And the Rising Sun team, I remember, I have a photograph of it. It varied, of course, over a couple of years, but in one photograph I have, I think there's 6 of my cousins playing in it. But you must remember it was Depression years, and there was no work on the East Coast. And here we were starting a business all this way out here, and we had employment for men, and we had relatives writing to us for work. And all my father's family and my mother's family were all big families, 6, 8 children in the family. They were all young men.
Now tell me, what do you remember of the native situation here? Did you have contact with them at all?
We did. My mother had a woman who used to come do a washing at the Rising Sun. Her name, would you believe, is Blanche. I remember that there was some sort of law. Wasn't too worried about it at the time, but I know that the police came out and said, Mrs. Weaver, you can't keep this woman here because you cannot employ natives on a gold field. So my mother told her she had to go, and we drove her back to the telegraph station. The next morning she was sitting on our doorstep. We couldn't get rid of her, and she just wanted to come and work there. She liked it. When we came to town, quite often you'd go out and you'd find Blanche hiding under the house, hiding from the policeman. She'd come in to do the washing, and she'd help my mother with the washing and then just get out and walk back to the telegraph station.
You interested me in telling me that you used to have a lot of comics. Now, this would be the last thing I expect to be up here way back in the early 30s when you couldn't really get food or anything else up, or it was very difficult. How did you get your comics?
Well, they came up by the mail, and there was a comic book called Wags, which had the Phantom and the Orphan Annie, and I remember my mother sent me to a fancy dress ball once in Scott's Hotel, and I was dressed up as a Phantom. I was the skinniest kid in town, so I didn't make much of a Phantom. My mother taught me to read and write, and I actually started school here at Tennant Creek. I think I was about 13 and a half. And Jackie and I and Jimmy and a lot of others were rounded up and sent to school, and we didn't take too kindly to it at all, because we had been driving trucks, and as a matter of fact, even after we had to go to school, I can remember coming out of school and getting the vehicle and driving my father out to the mine, and the local policemen, of course, were kind enough to turn a blind eye to this because they knew our family needed us. But I can also remember them getting me about a week before the races were on one time and rounding us up and saying, now you kids, if I catch you driving that truck in the next week, I'll kick you on the backside. You know, stay off them while all the visitors are in town for the races.
There's one who used to dispense pies, soft drinks, etc., Paddy Kevan. Would you like to tell me something of him?
Yeah, I remember him vividly because I think he came from Queensland somewhere, and he used to sell hot pies. He used to make and sell hot pies. He used to make them in the winter time, and he used to sell them at the basketball, and he used to sell them at interval outside the pictures. And he also started a soft drink factory. He used to make all sorts of things like sarsaparilla and lemon and orange and what have you. And of course he used to use the recycled bottles from the back of Scott's Hotel, the brown beer bottles. Oh. And there was no shortage of them, of course. And no, not only as kids, we appreciated them greatly, but the women folk in the town too. It was great to get soft drinks. Well, the picture show, of course, was a great thing for we children. Pictures were all old, of course, and the first ones were silent. The projector used to break down, and it was a real night for us to come into town on a Saturday from the mine and go to the pictures. Out of devilment, we used to try and see how many we could get in free, and one of us would buy a ticket, and if we could sneak past without handing our ticket in, we would. And then we would we'd go up the front. They had these old canvas chairs, and we would sneak it under the corrugated iron to our friend outside, and he would try to get in. I can also remember when the music would stop and the blackness descended. There was no roof on the place, and there'd be 4 or 5 kids come hurtling over the wall and race up and sit beside us. And one of the big impressions I get from Tennant Creek, which did not happen until after we moved into town, incidentally, was the first refrigeration arriving. I don't mean in the hotels, but I mean in the houses. I remember when we were living, I think it was about 1938 or something, we bought a kerosene-operated refrigerator. And to me, this was a miracle to put that water in there and have ice. It was, it was just the epitome of luxury that we could visit in those days, to have ice in Tennant Creek.
Could you just tell me how it is you got out of the mine and just what you did just briefly after that?
During the war, we did not work the mines because we had exemptions. After the war, you have to work them or you lose the leases. And by this time, my father was dead and my brother was killed in the war, and it was only my mother and myself. And she was in ill health. We didn't have the capital to work the mine. And my wisdom at the time, my main concern was to find sufficient money to support my mother. And so I made the decision to sell the leases, which we did. And she did live in reasonable physical comfort, if not mental comfort anyway, the rest of her life.
For more information about the tragedies which forced the Weaber family to leave the Tennant goldfields, please visit Freedom, Fortitude and Flies, an exhibition in the Social History Museum at the Battery Hill Mining Centre, Tennant Creek. This talking photograph album was created by Meg Kellum, freelance historian, educator and broadcaster, with financial support from the Regional Museum Support Grant Program, Museum and Art Gallery, NT.